Clash of styles between Endemic and Team Freedom leaves us with a tied series on our hands and leaves us wanting more. Endemic has come in with a super beefy composition, playing a lot of melee heroes in games 1 and 2. It worked out for them on Sky Temple, though they did have a lot to respond to. It just was too much for them versus Freedom in Game 2 on Shrines.
It seemed like compositionally it was the right call on game number 1. Map-wise, it was the right call on game number 2, except they went into a lot of firepower, so compositionally maybe a little bit different. So we'll see how the draft goes in their future series, but a clear mindset, a clear strategy involved. Execution, however, on that last game, just heavily in favor of Freedom.
Well, so far in their first 3 series, Endemic has chosen first pick upon losing a game. Let's see if it keeps up as we are about to check in with the Battleground pool. And they do, they pick first pick, and Freedom will take us to Tomb of the Spider Queen. Any thoughts on Tomb between these teams?
Jaina. Definitely Jaina. Definitely Tassadar. We saw Tassadar banned out, which is one of the rare times I think we're going to see that in most series. But again, Lutano's saying that they have the best Tassadar and Yoda. This being another Tassadar Battleground Tomb, and Infernal are probably the 2 independent Tassadar Battlegrounds you can go with without that. But we've seen the priority on banning a Tracer, things of that nature. So I think that is something with the draft order that teams are definitely going to have to play around.
Yeah, Team Freedom twice on Tomb of the Spider Queen so far has picked Tassadar very highly. They've comboed that with Tracer when she's available to them. And then also that leaves them to go for Karazim later on because they have that double supporting. It's an aggressive style of Tomb of the Spider Queen. But we'll see what is allotted to them because Endemic have already banned Tassadar versus Freedom once, but that was in the second ban spot. If they leave it till that, they are not likely to be able to ban it away, but they still don't want to deal with the Tracer. Makes a lot of sense that's going to be banned.
You know, one of the adaptations that we've seen in Europe, including, I believe, maybe the Tomb game with Dignitas just earlier, is that they'll first pick Tassadar, and they're like, well, you're not going to pick Vala, and they would pick up Vala. They're one of those teams that can get away with that because they have such a strong backline. Snitch would argue that he's probably the best Tassadar player, maybe up there with Hasu in Europe and possibly the world there with that duo. But we're moving quickly through this draft as Hanzo picked up by Endemic. Johanna Urel, very tanky, picked up for Freedom.
And how different to see a Johanna Urel rotation where only recently that would have been a just as fast Johanna Blaze.
Yeah.
But that is the impact of our newest hero. Also, Hanzo undefeated in this series, and he has now changed hands back and forth every single series with Endemic willing to pick him in that first pick position, even on Tomb of the Spider Queen.
Yeah, Hanzo's still sitting at above a 60% win rate, which is pretty much where we left off at the end of Phase 1, except that was pre-nerfs, Hanzo, so it's still showing he's quite strong. Murden picked up here to try and disrupt a lot of early rotations, does give you that control. But the one thing Urel and Johanna do, Gilly, is that they contest those turn-ins. And we've seen that when teams aren't able to aggress forward and push the enemy team back, they've struggled. And Murden gives you that ability to walk forward, maybe make room, bully your way in a little bit. So I think with Endemic, that's a good pickup for the early part of the draft.
Malfurion will be able to have some of the poke to stop those turn-ins too, as well as Hanzo. Now Freedom possibly either looking at a backliner here for their next ban or the solo lane too, and seeing what they can do to limit Cure and what he would like to play on this map. Any immediate thoughts jump out to you for Urel? She does all right in that matchup, no matter who she's against.
I mean, Urel, like
she does her thing.
Every time there's a Urel in my game, I'm like, well, nobody's winning that lane. Every time there's a Urel in these games, I'm like, well, nobody's winning that lane. So it doesn't matter. So, like, I don't even know what to make of it. Like, it doesn't matter who you pick. I mean, you know, one of the heroes that I think conceivably does well that still can't push is somebody like a Phoenix. Like, range generally does well against melee, but it's still Urel, so it doesn't matter. Like, literally pick anybody, and you're like, well, I lost. I'm not winning.
I heard Trixler talk about a Malthael, but we just haven't seen too
Get away
much
from me,
of
weird goat.
the Reaper of Souls. Deckard Cain instead, or Deckard Cain as well as Tassadar as the ban for Freedom. Tassadar is also a good pairing for Hanzo, so that's why we're seeing that for Endemic, the ban against Endemic.
See, I think also Tassadar gives you that thing at level 4 called Armor when that shield breaks, and one hero that likes to do burst damage with a little bit of more burst damage is Jaina. And so I think Jaina definitely has a little bit more priority here for Team Freedom over potential TAS and any other pairing. And they could just as easily go Phoenix and Jaina at any given point. I don't know if they would be willing not to pick Jaina up here. They can probably forgo Phoenix at this point if they're not going that route. But giving up Jaina to potentially Endemic, I think, is something that they would consider on the other side.
I wonder.
Oh, wow.
Lutano without Hanzo goes back into Greymane. They also get Rhaegar, who offers up more sustained healing early game. Is able to go around and add some damage with Feral Lunge too. Not quite the same way you would see maybe Karazim from Team Freedom, but maybe this then is because Tassadar is absent, they would prefer to have someone with a bit more of the healing and bite that Rhaegar can have there.
I don't see, I mean, if you're not winning a lane, you're not losing a lane. You need protection against this dive style, definitely potentially not a bloodlust composition. Bunker is definitely good to disrupt an onslaught potentially coming in from people that like to bite each other.
Mm-hmm. Or you. I forgot to Aegis of Light from Urel.
Why me?
I didn't mean you. I mean like, they're not going to be biting each other. They're going to be coming after you, the rhetorical you. Aegis of Light from Urel can also have some additional help and supporting too for Freedom.
Goats bite too, by the way.
They bite everything.
They gave
Can't have Jaina if she's taken away.
Because they had the Chromie in their back pocket.
Chromie was another hero I had on the mind as contested between the two teams, but I felt like if anywhere it'd be Volskaya. Both the teams love playing Chromie on Volskaya, but Freedom has so far only played her on Volskaya. They haven't been willing to play somewhere else, but having their Tassadar, their Tracer taken away, having some adjustments here, this should be a Lutano Chromie though. This should be Yoda playing Greymane.
Think about this now though, is that if Blaze is picked up instead of Dahaka, you have a safety net.
Mm-hmm.
Now you've got a Hanzo, a Malfurion, and a Jaina. No cleanse, no bunker to jump into. You could hopefully get Ice Block by the time late game comes in. That gives you a defensive tool. Malfurion has Ice Block at 13. But their Temporal Loop is a very real threat now with that Chromie pickup.
Yeah, it is not often that you get to see a team pick up a Chromie in a way that they have not a lot of ways of, or your opponents have not a lot of ways of dealing with it. There's no Into the Fray, there's no bunker, there is no cleanse, Nature's Cure doesn't work the same way. So that's gonna be pretty scary.
Well,
maybe Endemic can just dive in on Chromie and get the kill from her with the Dahaka and a Muradin.
One thing for me, though, when I look at this composition, I mean, yeah, you've got Johanna for wave clear. We've seen Rhaegar gets the lightning shield down, but Greymane's wave clear really comes when he's able to get into Worgen form. And that is a little bit more difficult when you're defending against web weavers. Chromie obviously can only drop the Dragon's Breath every so often. Dragon's Eye should be the pickup here. We've seen a little bit of Mobius Loop, but that's more deal with Hammer. So you have tools, but you don't have the heavy wave clear outside of maybe the Johanna Rhaegar, which might be enough.
There are some possible dive heroes from Team Freedom, like the Greymane and even Rhaegar, but that's going to be, they're going to have to be cautious about how they approach that. B-Kid has the slow from Thunderclap. Jaina has her slows too, and the control there. And then, of course, Malfurion and Muradin, even a drag. So I wonder if we'll see just another Cursed Bullet and then try to set that up for Chromie to finish off a kill from a Temporal Loop. We will find out.
Well, one thing that you made note of last week that we've seen an uptick on is going more into that Lightning Shield build. And we've even started to see adaptations of going full on into it. We're going to see the bigger radius here. We'll see if we spec into that as this game goes on, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on as B-Kid goes in, gets a nice stun right as Collusion goes in.
We'll talk about consistent poke. If there's one hero you want to have consistency on, it's Chromie. Try to stack up as fast as possible. And he's already sitting at 10 Sandblast stacks. You know, when you hit consecutive heroes, they count as 2, and that is showing you just how fast he can stack that up, and that's the benefit of having Chromie onto him. Besides the fact that she can try to stop you from sieging because she has that kind of poke and heavy damage, she also has a lot of opportunities with such swift rotations between a couple of lanes. She's generally going to have a lot of people around to try to stack that up on.
Well, right now, I think the effort that we see from both teams is to make sure when you have an opportunity to turn in, And I think that's definitely going to be something there. The Siege Camp's going to buy a little bit of time, a little bit of space, but the rotation of the Rhaegar and the Greymane are prioritizing those camps. They're going to get theirs. They're going to be a little bit late to rotate as Chromie's trying to deal with the camp pushing in. But the sieging potential of Hanzo is pretty limited. See if they bring in any bit more. That's going to be cleaned up before it does too much damage. Now it's Team Freedom's chance to potentially push in a little bit of their own, as they've got a night camp. But Jaina and Hanzo do very well at clearing up stuff like this.
Yeah, they do. They'll step forward. B-Kid turns in a couple of gems. Big impact. Finds himself in a place he does not want to be, and he goes down.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I think that's one of those situations where you had a pretty easy clear. The root's just going to miss out there, but that is more towards that hopping into Worgen form for Yoda, making sure to dodge those roots as he turns around, does a little bit of damage, and Nasmus brings the big hammer, knocks away any more threat, and Team Freedom stretching the lead. 1 kill, some structure damage done, some gems turned in. They now have enough if they get them all turned in. They might be looking for some early siege with this composition, and again, it is Rhaegar going more and more into that Lightning Shield build.
With how much damage that Team Freedom has done to structures already, I would not fault them for trying to get that early turn in at all. And you could see it, B-Kid, he has second wind, so he'll be able to heal up from that. And Cure is survivable too, but they are taking just so much damage every time they try to step forward. Try to turn around and get a drag as Dansky and Michael Udall were coming in to follow up. But a lot of this has just been trying to show up wherever Team Freedom are and not being able to get what they want from that.
Well, that opens the door for Team Freedom. We're going to see the turn in there up at the top. Nasmus trying to get turned in. Dansky not going to get the interrupt. Both teams do have enough for turn-ins. See if they can make that happen. ENDEMIC has soaked up quite a bit of that experience deficit so far. As Nasmus coming in again, bringing the hammer.
Dansky and Mike are here, this time a little bit faster, so that Nasmus is going to have to back off. And this is just turned into a mid-bot rotation with Johanna and Jaina doing their best to hold the top lane as the solo lanes come under fire, or are brought under fire if you're Team Freedom's case, trying to get that to Haka. But with the Greymane as down in the bottom lane as much as they had, this has just constantly had this bottom lane set up so that they can have a better rotation to this bottom turn in. Also, if they get those gems in, it's very likely that they get the focus down in the bottom. Collusion gets a kill, dodges with the Feral Lunge, the Storm Bolt.
And hits them with the
spray.
You know, that play looks cool, but it looks even cooler when you can throw down the spray.
Lutano.
Oh, if he got...
Oh, man.
He had Temporal Loop, by the way. He had just got level 8 off that. Had he snap locked that in, they might have been able to get it.
Now on Mike Udall, chunks that health bar.
You know, you can get your spray too by cheering.
Nice. Sell out.
Well, we've got a turn in finally here for Team Freedom. Subdue the pickup here. No blessed momentum for those cooldown reductions, instead trying to get more of that control with the slows on the front line, and then potentially if you finish that quest, again, just hitting 2 heroes, that's all it takes is to really get that value up, to easier land those skill shots, to get more control over that. So a lot there. Either way, we've got level 9 on the horizon here for Team Freedom. And at the end of this, they might be at 10, and they might have a lane soften up enough, Gilly, that they could just use those 10s, walk in, take an early fort, and really start to snowball. This is one of the key ways that you can get away with it in since these changes.
Yeah, an 80% slow that doesn't decay is very nice when you have a Chromie player on your team. Chromie is sitting at 22 stacks. So slowing down significantly from where he was at in the beginning, but now this is a great place to start building those back up. It's another one. Team Freedom willing to stick around. You see Ural diving very deep behind the fort, pushing back to Haka enough that I think he had to possibly stalk there.
He actually had to hearth because Nasmus is just walking in there like, what you gonna do about it? But as I said, when one of these falls, 10 is picked up. Gilly, they are not taking 1 fort. They're not taking 2 forts. They're taking everything. Yoda's got to back out just a little bit. Now Zugrug is able to wear those fort shots so that he can take the damage. And that allows Yoda to hop back into Worgen form. Doesn't have the attack speed slow. And all 3, I think Jaina will do enough. They might try and re-engage there.
They have another turn in, though. They can get the 3rd once they get those gems in. Ural's just watching the bottom. Nasmus does have a significant number of gems there, but this is one of the most effective first turn-ins of a game I have ever seen on Tomb of the Spider Queen, ever.
I mean, 1-2 kills is really all it took to kind of open things up. And the rotational control of Team Freedom, as you can see, the ENDEMIC is now, they're going to hold that camp to time it to defend the mid lane because they need every ounce of defense they can get. Team Freedom, however, they're going to counter it with a push of their own with their Knights.
Ring of Frost picked up for ENDEMIC. Still waiting to see if that'll be a Tranquility to try to heal people through what is likely to be a lot of burst between the Cursed Bullet now and the Temporal Loop, or if it's going to be all in on more of a Dragon's Arrow, Ring of Frost, and then Twilight Dream setup. Mike had good Twilight Dreams, especially in the first game.
See if he can make it happen here, because right now Team Freedom stretching this lead. That will be the third fort. Should fall there momentarily, but the action, of course, Nasmus pushing in bottom mid lane, has that camp, has that push from Zugrug and team. They'll be looking to pick up 13 off this. You can see Biggie dropping down the Blizzard, trying to push back a little bit, but the damage is heavy coming out here from Freedom.
The benefit of that Greymane. Zugrug's gonna come forward. We see the Temporal Loop. This is on Biggie.
Oh my god.
That was on Biggie. He is gone. Blessed Shield was used too. Ring of Frost out, doing what he could to survive that, or at least give the turnaround kill, but none of it was enough as Nasmus knocks back ENDEMIC, and Team Freedom wants some keep damage.
They're getting it, and there's enough minions here. They might be able to push in with this. It all comes down to, can they get the Greymane on this? And right now, doing a very good job on the side of ENDEMIC by clearing those minions. Not necessarily prioritizing the heroes. Those are the secondary option. Getting the minions down first and then making sure to put the damage onto the heroes. But Team Freedom, with this keep sitting about 30 to 40%, they're going to try and clear the minions, get their minions back on here, and look to see if Yoda can hop into Worgen form. But he has to be careful moving in against that Ring of Frost that you made note of.
Nasmus has been doing a great job of going forward, creating space for the rest of the team, and then using Divine Steed to haul tail out of there. Running away, especially when Mike comes in to try to root him down. Still a massive experience advantage, and with this Dragon's Eye, long siege, every time a minion wave comes in, ENDEMIC moves back and Freedom steps forward. Eyes on taking this keep down. They step forward one more time. Web Weavers will soon be coming in, including on this lane, but they will face it without a keep to back them up.
If you are ever playing this game and you know that catapults are in your lane, you know that it is one of the worst things to deal with. Hey, I got this Web Weaver, and then you realize there's catapults in that lane. You're like, the Web Weavers aren't really going very far, and it's just, it's a bad feeling. And right now that mid lane is not a priority in terms of making sure that gets the maximum value. It's the easiest because you get control and vision, but they are just fighting for experience right now and overall map control because they have a lot of gems, but they just do not have control over the map to get those turned in. When they get 13, and by the end of this, you'll see the lanes pushed up at least to midway through this, top to bottom. Now they can start to get back into the game.
Yes, it's a blessing for ENDEMIC that they did not lose gems, really, along with that push, which means if they can get these lanes pushed somewhere and they're turning their focus to the bottom lane primarily, get 13, and then try to get the rest of those gems in, they not only get rid of the gems, but they can do a lot more structurally with it. They're looking at this bottom fort. Freedom has so much of a lead, though, in this game that they are more than okay to give that up. It's all about just trying to get to 16 and then get even more done, especially since they already have catapults in one lane. They can just work on building up more gems and a way to close out this game.
Curious to see, I didn't catch the number before we got the turn in on how much Team Freedom has turned in, but they actually have their eyes on Yrel. Gonna use that Divine Steed. Cure goes in, gets the Brush Stalker in. Ardent Defender's gonna be here. See if we get the roots. The roots are gonna buy, and Nasmus hops right over the wall, and just like that, Yrel says, I'm good. Now we're gonna see the counter kill potentially come in. There goes the Temporal Loop. Dansky very healthy here, staying alive.
Yeah, the Dragon's Eye came in a little bit too early. Now, with that, Dansky's allowing this to turn around. The Ancestral Healing keeps Johanna alive for a little bit, but in the end, she will fall as ENDEMIC finds a welcome kill.
Second win kicked in here for B-Kids. See if they try and re-engage. They're gonna walk away from that now. No Johanna. They're gonna clear out the lane, still sitting on 82 plus gems and counting. Over on the other side, Team Freedom sitting on 50 plus. Not enough for a turn in, but it's enough to say, hey, look, we don't want to run the risk of dropping all these. So they bought a little bit of space there. They get the turn in, but this is ENDEMIC's moment to make their way back into this game. 16 or not, they've got to get this turn in. Again, just for control. But Team Freedom, again, getting camps, one at the bottom, night camp on the side, catapults in the middle. Your push becomes severely diminished at this point.
And that was even seen. That was fully in the face of ENDEMIC, because once you get the turn in, you can see them stay on the board, and there was just little to be done with that because the lanes were so far pushed back. Had they maybe tried to invade, maybe could have caught them in time, maybe could have gotten the camp, but they need these lanes to be pushed out because they need to take structures down. They need to open up this map and get some experience back. And this is a perilous time for ENDEMIC because though they've gotten a second turn-in phase in a row, it's still 16 here for Team Freedom, and they have Temporal Loop, and I doubt that we see the same mishap with that we saw with the last one.
It's enough to scare them off. Again, that siege camp at the bottom dealt with. Urel dealing with this. And again, when I said it was diminished, I didn't expect this amount, but this is just very well played by Team Freedom because the lanes are still all pushed out towards the side of ENDEMIC, and that is not where you wanted to be at the end of this because now Team Freedom has an opportunity to turn in, and then now not just one keep, but two keeps, and if they get a kill, with no 16 on the other side from ENDEMIC, potentially end this game early.
Here come the Web Weavers and the rest of Team Freedom as they march down this bottom lane. ENDEMIC keeping that Dahaka in the mid, doing what they can to soak up to 16 so that they can, at the very least, have a defense that's on the same terms.
Gilly, no ice block, by the way, for Malfurion. This is the Innervate talent, which against a Temporal Loop Chromie, this is not something you see very often. It gives Malfurion mana.
And cooldown reduction.
But if Team Freedom sees that, Michael Udall is now a Temporal Loop target. I mean, we're here at 15, so surely they would have seen it by now. Lutano, there's going to be Jaina.
Well, the Temporal does go out, but it's on the Jaina, and Zugrug again set up to follow that up with a Blessed Shield, but they survived it. And that is,
wow.
Yes, the keep goes down, but this is where ENDEMIC would need to fight. They have fallen so far behind, they take a ton of damage, though, as that Ring of Frost goes out and Jaina falls.
She's down. Ancestral's going to land on the Zugrug, and now the assault continues. BKit trying to keep everybody safe, but that's 2 members down. Let's make it 3, but BKit able to survive for now. Going to hit the Storm Bolt. Now no Temporal Loop, but the Dragon's Eye comes down. Yoda coming in. He's going to confirm kill number 3, and now they're going to turn their attention to the core. I kind of wondered ENDEMIC if they were going to try and make that happen. They got super aggressive, and I think it ended up countering. They realized their options to come back were dwindling with each and every passing moment. And Team Freedom now up 2-1, and the last 2 games have definitely been in favor of Team Freedom.
Yes. The sheer amount of damage done structurally was a bad omen for how the rest of that game was going to go if Team Freedom got the first turn in. And that you get 2.5 fourths off of your very first set of Web Weavers is about as much as you can possibly imagine.
127,000 damage for Greymane, and I guarantee you that's more offensive than defensive, because he was ripping things apart. And that is one of the things that Greymane does better than probably any hero in the game, is when he's in Worgen form and has that Inner Beast going, he will rip through every structure you have on the map. And I would venture to say that Yoda at various points, I'd love to see his hit combo there that it shows like in the bottom left of Inner Beast. How big did his combo get? Because whether it was human form or Worgen form, it seemed like those auto attacks just kept coming and coming and coming. It was just overwhelming for ENDEMIC.
Well, after that Temporal Loop hit and the Blessed Shield and ENDEMIC survived, I thought that maybe that was going to be a good chance for ENDEMIC to have the one last fight to defend their core and hopefully be able to stabilize the game a little bit, although you're still trying to stabilize a game where you've lost several keeps. But I think it was a cocktail. It was some sort of area damage. Just as they dove in for a target, just melted so many of them. And then, unfortunately, they just couldn't get back in the fight. It was way too much to try to handle. But that was really kind of the name of the entire game. Just Team Freedom was way too much to try to handle.
And the fact that they're doing it in different forms, they tried the Greymane in game number 1, Sky Temple, much larger rotations, much more predictable. You didn't have the objective to necessarily manipulate the rotations the same way the Web Weavers do. They tried their hand again. We saw the Rhaegar Greymane rotation towards the Siege Camp early and then towards the Knights. Didn't necessarily pay dividends, but it set the tone of the game that, look, you guys are going to be looking for us. We're going to be looking elsewhere, and that's turn ends, that's structure damage, and good luck getting to us. And I think that game right there, Team Freedom, that is the Team Freedom we know to kind of play around, choose the fights, get the picks when they need them, and then capitalize on them afterwards. And every time they got that kill, they were able to push in. And that mid-push on that mid-keep just showed the mentality. When you have the Chromie, it's like, well, come get us because I'm just going to siege up from further than you can get to.
Well, we talked about the teams and who was being cheered for the most for NA, but let's